Hey everyone, so just wanted to get your ear for a quick second and say that today we're going to be talking about a pretty gnarly topic. And so if you have kids in the car or, depending on what you've exposed them to already, you might just want to save this one for another time. That being said, it's something I'm super passionate about and something that I'm really exploring in my own life, different ways to tackle this problem and the problem as I see it, which is what we're going to talk about today. So thanks. Well, I did know eventually I was going to get deep on this show, and I didn't really know how or why or whatever, but I'm a deep human. I'm always musing over the most ridiculous shit, like why we're here in the first place. Like, I think I look around and I think, man, we're all literally going to die and nobody ever talks about it, and I just can't understand how the most traumatic thing that's going to happen to all of us is very rarely mentioned. But then now in 2019, I look around and I'm looking at a new world in a lot of ways, right? Because when you have this many people taking the off-ramp early in the form of suicide, you have to ask yourself, what in the hell is going on? Because, there's a brutality that is baked into existence itself. Like if you look into nature, there's an Instagram page called Nature is Metal. And I'm not going to lie, it's some of it's even tough to look at because these animals are just fucking other animals up. And it's hard to look at. With the brutality of it, you understand that there's something beautiful about the temporary existence that we all are here for, and the fact that it all continues, right? Like all of the brutality is almost necessary for the life cycle, and the imperfections in the universe are actually necessary for existence itself. That's true at a molecular level, but it's also true at our level because the imperfections are what we forge ourselves against in order to become who we might and to build ourselves into what we could become while we're here. And so all the imperfections are needed. But the problem is, when you get away from nature, when you get into the human world, we have ideas and we have constructs and we add judgment to the brutality. And so now all of a sudden we become a victim of our own ideas. One of the things that I've heard recently is that humans don't have ideas. Ideas have humans. And I think that's true, right? Because all you have to do is look at how vehemently people will defend their political system or their beliefs about God or whatever it is. It's like you don't have ideas. Those ideas have you. And what's important to understand is that sometimes our ideas have us so much, we become so myopic to our problems that we don't feel like there's a way out. The problem is, though, that these are all ideas. And so whatever it is that you're suffering from, like internally, probably in silence, it's only an idea. And that's the thing to understand. Like there's always a way to get out. But, I don't know. I guess just looking around at my life and where it's at right now, I love this life so much, but I love it so deeply that sometimes I find myself putting up walls so that I can protect myself from the pain that it incurs sometimes. And I think we all naturally do that. But I think I just decided in my own life, like I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not living in fear. I'm going to face all of the things as forthrightly as I possibly can think to do. And the suicide problem in our country is one of them, or in our culture, I should say. Of course, with the veteran statistics, you guys have heard the outrageous statistics, like something like 4,000 something people have died in combat, but another 130,000 of them plus have died by taking their own lives. And that's in my population, right? The veterans. But you can also look at like the way that, for example, the most climbing suicide rate in the country right now is girls between the ages of like 12 and 16 or something. Like to me, that all of these notions are preposterous because this life has so much to offer. And yeah, it's fucking super brutal, but there's a beauty in the impermanence if you allow yourself to see it. But if you become too myopic in your ideas, then those ideas control you and you feel like there's no way out. And so then when you feel like there's no way out, it seems like the off-ramp is the only way. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, like I can remember, I remember every single morning for about 6 months of my life, I would get up, walk outside, I'd look at my car, thinking about my way to go to work, and I would just think, fuck, just get through today. Just get through today where I can go back to bed. That's all I would think of. And I know that that's uncomfortable to talk about. It's probably even uncomfortable to hear. But I think that I want to talk about it because I think that what I began to realize is, like I was talking about yesterday, the problem's not the problem. You're looking at it wrong. And because your ideas have you don't feel like there's anywhere to maneuver, like there's any light at the end of the tunnel. And we're not taught that we can go create the light if we want it. We're not taught that, all the people that have decided, hey, life has to look this way, the people that have built the constructs that we're living within, they're dead. And so you're not obligated to follow any kind of certain path, especially at the price of existence itself. Because, it's easy in all of our searching, like we all have this deep desire to find meaning in our lives and to find the thing that's going to make us happy, right? Like the final thing of contentment, the religion, the market, and religions and marketers and all of the people know that. And that's why they do it. Politicians know that, right? They prey on your fears. They try to offer you the solution. The thing to understand is as long as you're searching, you're going to miss what it's all about. You're the solution. You have the opportunity right now, and you can do anything you want with it, right? Humanity is the cosmos interacting with itself. And you could spend hours or weeks or months thinking about what that really means. But what it means to me is that you have an opportunity to engage with and explore in existence itself in any way that you want to, which means sometimes you have to take a step back from the ideas and the constructs that are making you feel trapped in the first place. When you look at the brutality of nature, one of the things you understand is that the animals or the nature that's carrying itself out, that's reliving this life cycle, they don't have consciousness, right? Like humans have. But everything has a shadow in this life, meaning there's a good and a bad polarity to every single part of this life, which is why it can't be simplified, which is why the paradoxical nature of existence itself always exists. And so the shadow of our own consciousness is anxiety. It's the price you pay to know that you know, right? You understand that you're finite. You understand that you're going to end. You understand that there's pain and that there's suffering and that you're going to live through it over and over. So anxiety is the price to know that you know. It's the shadow of consciousness. But when you think about leaning into the polarities in life, you get what you tune into. So if you are tuned into the shadow, if you're tuned into the anxiety, if that's what you're looking for, you can dwell on all of the reasons that this imperfect life is not what you want it to be. But there's also a second mode of being, and I totally understand that this is not easy. This is only simple, right? And that's something I say a lot because looking back, I remember feeling so fucking trapped in my own thought patterns and process. And if you're dealing with these thoughts about what's wrong and what's not right, a question you might want to ask yourself is, where do you think you're going in life where things can't be wrong? Like, what's so not okay about things being wrong? That's a serious question because something's always wrong, right? Because we live in an imperfectly perfect universe. The imperfection is what allows it to continue. Something's always wrong. You're not going anywhere in life where things can't be wrong, though. You can still appreciate what's here, what's in front of you, right? Like, for example, something might be wrong with your job, your spouse, your life right now, and there might be something else that you want to go do. That's okay. You can want to go do something else while acknowledging that something's wrong, and it doesn't have to be a problem for you. You can just acknowledge it and continue to build and create the life that you want. Life isn't conflict. It's polarities, right? It's not you versus me in any way. We're not trying to change each other. We're trying to change a world that's not quite as good as it could be. But what that means is that in a lot of ways, we have to band together, especially in this epidemic. One of the things Gary Vee's talked about in his recent content creation is that the odds of you being human are something like 400 trillion to 1. Now, I don't even know how you could figure that out, and I also don't know what it means because I can't comprehend the relative size of it. But what I do know is if the odds are anything even close to that, it's so incredibly rare that we're even here in the first place. To take that opportunity and to live it in constructs that aren't serving us seems like a fucking problem to me. And that's what propels me in this message. And so a lot of times what's wrong is just the world view that we have, right? We're trapped in our worldview, so it makes us feel like we don't have other options for what our life could be. When you I'm sure know people that have taken their own lives, and I'm sure that that's been really fucking difficult for you. And they have dealt with things that I could not imagine. And that's the crazy part about humanity itself. We're all dealing with something that we are way ill-equipped to deal with. which is why we have to lean on each other, which is why I want to share some of my thoughts on life itself, because if you're feeling like it's not worth it, that I would say to you, a theory of the universe, this for you in your own mind, has to have in it the bet that life is worth it. Otherwise, suicide would be the only option that makes sense. But what I think is a lot of people haven't made that decision in their mind. And if you get stuck in indecision, it'll tear you up. It'll tear you apart at the seams. But that's something that I think you really have to think through, because if it's not worth it, you're going to act that out over and over in different ways, and you're going to grow resentful of existence itself. But most likely it's because you're focusing on the wrong side of the coin. And if you're focusing on the wrong side of the coin, it's most likely because you're caught in a construct that doesn't allow you to see the other side of it. Understand that the way you're looking at the world, the point of view that you have is just your view from your current point, and you can change that point at any single time. Now, again, it's not easy, right? And that's why we have coaches. That's why we have mentors. That's why we have books. That's why we have psychedelics, right? Because a lot of times what happens is, especially with PTSD or certain modes of depression, is you get caught in these thought loops. And so the thought loops are over and over. And so it's like a cycle that always leads you back to the depression, right? Because things can't be right, and here's why, and now here's how I'm going to feel about it. And so you keep going over and over. Now, one of the things that we're starting to learn, for example, for psychedelics, and I'm not going to go way into this, but one of the things that they do, and you could recreate this with many different things in your life, is that they shock your system. You become insanely inundated with the understanding of everything that the universe actually is, right? You all of a sudden don't see it through your lens. You're outside of your construct. And so all of a sudden you become aware of things like love and things like life that are existent all around you. And because it shocks your system so much, it shocks you out of that cycle. You leave that feedback loop. And that's what makes them so potent for things like treating depression. I think right now they're going to phase 3 clinical trials with MDMA to treat PTSD because the results are absolutely out of control. What's happening is that you're shocking your system. You're understanding, there's a new way to be. I don't need to be in this loop anymore. And you get that perspective. But man, when you're in it, when you're in that loop, there is no perspective. There's just surviving. And so I guess I didn't really plan on talking about psychedelics, but what I think is the reason I wanted to even mention them. Like, you can find that through travel. You can find that through astounding experience. You can find that through flow state. You could find that through anything that Jason Silva describes as north of happiness, right? Like peak experiences. When you're in a flow state, think about this like surfing or something else. When you're in a flow state that's induced by some of these peak experiences, one of the things that you figure out is that you're not thinking anymore about the burden of existence itself, the problems, the constructs, the viewpoints that you're stuck inside of, the things that aren't going to work out and never will, the things that'll never be right. When you search for peak experience, one of the things that you find is that you put that burden down, and so you're outside of the cycle for a while. And if you just got outside of the cycle, maybe you could do it again. And so that's why certain things like surfing or biking or running have saved so many people's lives, because it induces that flow state, which puts you north of happiness, which allows you to put down the burden of being itself. And sometimes that's really, really necessary. That's also another reason why a lot of my work is I'm starting to do a ton of research on flow states, on how to apply them to your life, on how to use them for a recipe to change your life, because we've got to shock our systems. We have to understand that the constructs that came before us were built in order to serve a world that no longer exists. Even school was built to create obedient factory workers. And I'm going to be honest with you, there's not many factories around anymore. And even the ones that lifestyle just does not work for everyone. Now, it might work for you, and you might not be who I'm talking about, but I'm sure that regardless of what parts of the constructs are working for you, there are some that aren't. The thing that I want you to understand is that there's another way out besides the ultimate way out. The other way out is your point of view. And you should be tirelessly searching for new points of view, because those are the things that are going to change your life. What you don't know is so much more important than what you do know, because what you don't know can change your life. The perspective that you don't have is the one that could be your divergence into a new life. And that's true across the board. When I was driving down the highway and I was fantasizing about driving my car into cement pilings, that was because I didn't yet have the perspective that told me there was a new way to be. I didn't have to be on that road at all anymore. And that's what's important to know. I didn't have to look at the things the way that I looked at them. And since finding a new perspective, and since really diving deep into spirit and psychology and all these things, what I'm finding is all of the people in my lives, I'm meeting them for the first time because I'm no longer seeing them through the constructs that I was seeing them through. I'm not seeing them through in relation to my own ego so much anymore. Now I'm starting to see people for who they really are, and the world's entirely different than I thought it was, especially when I look back to how I felt in those dark moments. Now, there's no perspective and there's no point of view that's going to allow you to leave those dark moments behind forever because we live in an imperfectly perfect universe. But if you understand that they don't have to be a permanent state of things, they're just teaching you something. There's something you could learn here. Maybe you just need to endure, and that's okay too. Just endure and search for the new perspective that's going to allow you to get out. But look, I don't think that we should tell people what to do with their own lives. That's an opinion I have, and it's probably an unpopular one, but I don't care. I don't think that you have the right to tell someone what they should do with their lives because they're going through struggles that you have no idea about. They're stuck in constructs. You could look at them from the outside and say, hey man, just look at it this way. It's like, well, no shit, but they're stuck in constructs you don't understand. But I think my work, the thing that I want to focus on is if you're stuck in a construct, you've got to understand there's a new way to be. You know, one of the things I'm going to leave you with today, and I know I went a little bit long, and I know on a Friday this is kind of a crazy message to have, but so be it. You know, people take their lives on Saturdays just like they do on Mondays. And so the thing I want to leave you with is what I realize my work is and what I realize your fundamental job is when you're stuck in these constructs that aren't serving you in these pain loops and cycles and depression cycles is, you know, you're holding up the pieces of your life and you had a vision for it, and that vision was fucking shattered by the world, and it's always that way. The vision is always shattered by the world because you don't understand the world yet, and as you get into it, you realize it bites back. It's a little more brutal than you thought it was. It's a little more tumultuous than you thought it was. Now, what you need to understand is that on the other side of that turmoil, remember, life is polarities, not conflict, and so every polarity has an opposite polarity to it, and so if life is way worse than you thought it was, guess what? That means that it has to be way better than you thought it was as well. You just have to be able to give yourself the perspective that allows you to see that. And so when you're looking at the pieces of your life, you have a vision for what it was. That vision gets shattered by the world, and now you're holding up the pieces of your life and you say, damn it, it's broken. Look, it's broken. And then you're going through thought loops because you're like, everything is broken. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move on with some semblance of meaning or joy or happiness. Right? And so what you want to do is you want to take those pieces of your life and you want to put them together in a different way. And you realize like, oh, see, it's not broken. They're puzzle pieces and they go together like this. And then when you put them together like this, the vision that it creates is so much better than the one you thought. Because like I said, if life's so much worse than you thought, then the opposite polarity is also true. It's so much better than you thought. You just have to be able to be willing to endure long enough to put the pieces together long enough and to find the perspective that's going to allow you to do it. That's the real work. And that's why I think this whole suicide epidemic is just, it's such a shame because it does not have to be this way. We have to stop saying anything has to be anyway. That's you clinging on to psychological safety or feeling like the thing that you learn first is the thing that has to happen in life. It doesn't matter the order that you learn in things. What matters is that you learn something that allows you to go through this life on your own terms so that you can be happy with your time here. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. So as always, you know I love you guys. I love humanity itself so much, which is why I think this message is so important. We'll talk Monday on Morning Coffee.
I dream the most when I'm awake, I found lofty expectations keep my feet upon the ground. Life is too short for settling, and the road less traveled is the one that I tend to take, relishing the challenges as proof I'm awake. Life is too short for settling. So I take the journey day by day, giving everything with no restraint. But the fear of failure remains inside. The pain reminds me I'm alive. I'm happiest when I am struggling. I've been warned, but I will not succumb to preparing for a future that I'm not sure will ever come. Life is too short for hedging bets. And passion's all that I've left in my possession. So I'll put all the faith I have in rhymes and chord progressions. Life is too short for settling. So I take the journey day by day, giving everything with no restraint. But the fear of failure remains inside. The pain reminds me I'm alive and that it's all I've known, it's all that's real. The only thing I will ever feel, the only regret I'll admit, is I've only got one life to give. I'm happiest when I am struggling.